Dr. John Tuccillo is Florida's Realtor's Chief Economist. As Chief Economist, he oversees the industry data and analysis department, which provides real estate statistics, trends, and research that helps realtor members better their business by the numbers and positions Florida realtors as a voice for real estate in Florida. We welcome him back. He was here 2 years ago. John, come on up.
In fact, the only suspense about the economy at the moment is when is the Fed going to raise interest rates? For those of you who are familiar with the classic film Airplane, and that's probably most of the men in the audience, it's not really a film that a lot of women get, or not get, but enjoy. But it has that kind of Animal House quality, which it does. But if you remember at the end of the movie, as the plane is making a crash landing, the announcement is coming over the airport PA. Flight number 26 from Los Angeles, now arriving at gate 4, gate 5, gate 6, gate 7. The increase in interest rates by the Fed is the landing of the plane in Airplane. September, October, November, who knows when. We all thought it was going to be September. I know several economic colleagues who are, shall we say, of a bit of reckless nature who lost a lot of money in Vegas betting on the September rate increase. It didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen is because one of the things is the employment report for September. The Fed knows these things a little bit in advance, or at least can guess it with everyone else. That was weak. Economic weakness in China, stuff like that. The Fed said, oh, let's wait a while. It now appears that the prospects of the Fed raising interest rates in 2015 have almost reached the 50% mark. It used to be 100%. Now it's down close to 50. It's still a majority. I still believe that they will raise rates this year. But I'll give you a little insight as to how economists deal with these things. About 2009, my wife asked me, when's the recession going to end? And I looked at her and I said, December. And she said, what year? And I said, I'm not wrong. We got December, that's good enough. Forget the rest. And I think the Fed will raise in 2015. What I do know is this. Two things are going to happen when the Fed raises rates for the first time. Number one is everybody in financial markets is going to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The uncertainty's over. It doesn't matter where rates go. Financial markets hate uncertainty. That's what they're laboring under now. Second thing that'll happen is the Fed's going to continue to raise rates. Probably 3-4 times, and if warranted more than that, quarter point at a time. So I figure by the time we get into mid-2016, you'll find the Fed funds rate somewhere north of 1%. Maybe it's at 0 now. Maybe going up toward 2%. So you can figure it. That is tragic, and it's not tragic. It's not tragic in the sense that the number is still small. Right? A lot of you remember, and we'll look at the gray hair in the audience, a lot of you remember rates that were much, much, much higher than that. And we all did. But it's tragic in the sense that the movement from 0 to 1% in relative terms is huge. And it's what have you done for me lately? Or more importantly, what have you done to me lately? And I think that's really where the issue comes. It's not the number, it's the movement of the number. And we have to worry about that a little bit. But I think by and large, that's the only suspense that's hanging over the economy. There are some wild cards out there, of course. Will the price of oil go back up? No. Will the Chinese economy collapse? No. But again, it's that relative thing. You know, a country that's growing at 7 to 10% a year suddenly starts growing at 5% a year, everybody sees it's the end of the world. So we do have that problem hanging out there. It's the second largest economy in the world, or so it claims. It's also a nation of 1.5 billion people who claims its favorite indoor sport is ping pong, but we're not going to worry about those types of things. So the Chinese economy may be the big wild card in all this. But I personally believe that as far as the U.S. economy is concerned, what you see is what you get. Slightly higher interest rates, growth at or about the current rates, inflation low. Fed is struggling to reach its target rate of 2% inflation. It's not there. So I think inflation will be low, all those kinds of things. That's the broader picture. We can talk about that later if you have questions. Let's talk about the Florida economy. The Florida economy is doing better than the national economy now. And I'll talk about some of the factors why. And it's likely to do so in the future. It's been a great recovery story. Florida has reclaimed its role, its traditional role in the United States of the destination for the naive and the gullible. And we're seeing that happen. We're seeing that happen, particularly in real estate. Real estate has always been the major beacon for Florida. So let's talk about what factors are impinging on Florida real estate. These are the factors you want to look at, to Florida's economy. These are the factors you want to look at when you think about, when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. You know, you don't figure out what's happening in the future by listening to talking heads and so-called experts. Because I'll let you know a very little secret. We lie. Not because we're evil people, because we don't really know what the future's going to be. We just have a reputation for saying it. But I want to talk about the factors that you should look at to make it happen. First of all, population growth. Florida has always thrived, as I said, by attracting the naive and the gullible. And people are coming again. And they stopped coming when the recession hit. And you can see that inflection point in the blue line. Blue line represents Florida's population. The green bars represent the growth rate of Florida's population. And it's organized by year, okay, starting in 1970 up till 2014. Now you will notice that during the recession, between 2006 and 2009, the growth rate of the population dropped dramatically, but it has increased since then. And there are two reasons why people are coming back to Florida. Number one is financial portfolios were restored. Household wealth in 2011 was higher than it was in 2006. So over that 5-year period, people took a bath, and then they got out to dry themselves off. And now they're in good shape. When they're in good shape, what do? Well, you know, these are folks who had plans to be in Florida. These had plans to relocate businesses in Florida, to move to Florida, to retire to Florida, to invest in property in Florida. These folks took those plans off the shelves and retained them. So we've got that. The other part of it is that when the Great Recession hit, what was the hardest hit industry? Come on, guys, you're in it. Construction and real estate. That's what took the bath. Now, what's happened since? There has been a revival. Especially down here. Southeast Florida, once again, has taken its place as the nesting grounds of the crane. And you'll get it in a second, don't worry. You know, and that construction comeback has brought back a lot of construction workers to Florida. Because when the construction industry tanked, what did they do? They went off seeking greener pastures, or at least less violent. So now it's back. We're getting a population increase. And you begin to see it. Again, the trend line, if there is one, that began about 1970, has been picked up once again about 2012 after that short inflection. And you begin to see it in the growth rates as they move along. Second thing, and this is probably the single most important number for you guys, employment growth. You know, we make a lot of hoo-ha about the unemployment rate. You forget the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate it's a fraction. As we all learned when we were 11 years old, fractions are evil. So the unemployment rate is almost indecipherable. Don't worry about it. Look at the number of jobs created. Everybody who has anything to do with real estate has a vital interest in employment. Because guess what? Unemployed people don't need a place to go to work. Or go out to eat, or shop, or be entertained. They don't buy or sell houses. And you know, that pretty much covers the entire gamut of real estate. Yes, unemployed people tend to set up shop in warehouses, so maybe there's a little bit of something there. But the fact of the matter is, if without jobs, there is no real estate market. It's the single most important thing that you can think about and track if you're in the real estate business. Every month, on the first Friday of the month, the national employment number comes out. Number of jobs created or lost. As I said, in September, it was a disappointingly low 142,000 jobs. That's below replacement. It has to be low 150. Lately, we've been over 200,000. That's background news. Next week, Florida will release its numbers for September by county. It's usually lags by 2.5 weeks. But the state will produce those numbers by county. So you can look at the trends for employment in the counties in which you do business. That's still a fairly gross area. You want to tighten it. And what I suggest people do to figure out, more importantly, what's going on in their particular area of interest is to put together a lunch group. That lunch group consists of representatives from the major employing industries in your market area. And you sit around and debrief each other. Who's moving in, who's moving out, what's happening here, what's happening there, and you talk about real estate. It's about this young lady here is probably going to have a lot of free lunches. Because she knows a lot about what's going on in terms of that. But you've got to figure out where employment is in order to figure out what's going on. Now, as a broad brush picture, this is a year-over-year change in Florida employment. You can see it started at the bottom of the recession, which is early 2009, and take it up to the present. If you can see where that zero line is, about halfway up. I apologize, we do not have an IMAX screen here. I ordered one up, the lady said no, and we don't have one. Anyway, so if you look at that, where that zero line is, about halfway up, we broke above the surface of the water somewhere in 2000 and the end of 2010, and we've been improving ever since. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when employment started to come back after the bottom, it came back in the tourism and hospitality industry, which is, of course, a major industry in Florida. Nothing to sniff at. But the interesting thing is that after that, every single sector, with the exception of government, every single sector joined that growth. This is a broad-based employment growth. It's not a specialized single industry growth. Now, construction's been the big gainer, the biggest gainer. And that's because it was the biggest loser. So we have that kind of balance. But every single industry in Florida has been increasing in employment. Now, down here in this section of the state, right, you've got construction going on, but you've also got a huge trade sector. And that trade sector is only going to get better as the Panama Canal widening finishes up. We begin to see a bigger flow of goods into the Port of Miami. In fact, when that happens, it affects the whole state. Clearly, the ports like Tampa, Miami, and Jacksonville, but also other areas like Orlando are going to benefit from the increased trade that occurs because of the widening of the canal. It means more increased warehousing space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that adds to construction and adds to all sorts of things. So I think what you're seeing here is employment growth that has been good and will continue to be good. And that means the real estate market is going to be good too. And I feel very strongly about this. I think that employment and real estate are joined at the hip. Right? And not even Ben Carson can separate them. So they're joined at the hip, and they will continue to be joined at the hip. That's good news for Florida. I could stop my presentation right here because this really is enormous. But there are other factors, and so we will continue. If I hit the right button, we will continue. Financial market performance. Not good lately, but financial market growth has put all those cranes into the pit. Why? Because folks have seen their portfolios restored, and they're scared to death it will happen again. We all live with the traumas of the past. But as a hedge against them going south again, folks are diversifying. What's good? Well, real estate's good. Florida real estate's good. So let's invest in it. And that's why you've got these condo towers going up and down the coast here. And it's also, by the way, a very interesting phenomenon here. Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, if you look at the geography, constitute a barrier island. Constitute a barrier island because they can't expand east and they can't expand west. They are constrained the way islands is. And that constraint, combined with this particular aspect, financial performance, means that you're seeing a lot of vertical growth in real estate and a lot of investment in condo construction. Now, to my mind, the number of condo towers that are going up in this area are only the first stage of 10 years of no growth. The condo market, for those of you who've been in that area of the world for a period of time, know that it runs in 10-year cycles. 10 years of overbuilding, 10 years of nothing. Well, we're in our 10 years of overbuilding cycle, so beware. But financial market performance has helped in terms of real estate investment and real estate growth. New construction, obviously, direct relationship in terms of employment, direct relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to dwell on that except to show you a map of Florida at night. And these represent building permits drawn. Okay? The two red marks in the center, Orange County and Suffolk County, are purely residential. That's mostly almost all residential. Suffolk County is all residential. It's the home of the villages. Some of you may be aware of the villages. Villages is an advanced base camp for an alien landing. And Orlando, which is doing a lot of apartment condo construction. But if you look down the southeast, the blue dots down there, Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach, those are predominantly condo construction. Those predominantly towers. In fact, if I pull the residential permits out of this particular map, those would be the three largest circles on the map. Those three counties, by the way, we do statistics every month for Florida realtors. Put them out on our website. And I will tell you that those three counties constitute the condo market in Florida. Everything else is just sort of change. And if we figure out what's going on there, that's really what's going to happen in the rest of the state.
Do you have a chart for the commercial properties like you have for residential?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Do you have a chart for the commercial permits, the new permits for commercial?
We don't have commercial permit data, unfortunately. What we do have is only residential permit data. Anyway, investor participation in the market. The investors saved the Florida market in 2009. The investors have diminished their interest in the market, and that's kind of is a drag on the market now. And what happened here? Okay, there I keep pushing the wrong button. Sorry. This represents cash sales, percent of closed sales for single-family homes and condos in Florida. You see those numbers are going down. They've been going down pretty much since 2012. In fact, they're now as low as they were at the bottom of the recession. That's the wave of investors that have come through the market, and are kind of not there now. Mortgage rates and availability, financing has always been the key. We found that financing has been an issue, not in the sense of its cost, but its availability. And we think this is getting better, and will get better in 2016. I think a lot of the barriers to financing that we've seen in terms of regulation, paperwork, et cetera, are beginning to abate. And those barriers will continue to abate in 2016. Inflation rates, very low, remaining low. You're living in a world which is pretty much inflation free. It'll pick up at some point, and not in the immediate future. Low oil prices are doing a lot for it, as a matter of fact. Social Security recipients, which of course make up a large part of the market down here, will get no increase next year because of oil prices, because oil prices are low, which of course is a wash for those who are still driving, whether it should be or not, but for those who are not driving, it's a loss. There are some concerns with deflation in areas, but I don't believe it's going to happen. Anyway, it's a very limited concern. All right. That's it, Tom. I'm not here to ask you any questions about what I've said about the U.S. economy or Florida's economy. Yes, sir.
Quick clarification, the condo market said it's a 10-year cycle, 10-year overbuilding, and 10-year flat. Is it a 20-year cycle?
Well, it's basically about, and this is an approximation. You know, you talk about residential cycles that go 5 to 7 years. Condo markets are about 7 to 10 year cycles. And what you're seeing now is just a lot of units coming online. And it's not only here. I mean, in Sarasota, for example, in downtown Sarasota, those of you who are familiar with it, it's not a very big place. There are 1,700 plus condo or rental units coming online over the next 3 years. And that, for that size town, that's a lot. So it's not just Southeast Florida. It's going on all over the place. Why is it going on all over the place? Again, we're back to that financial recovery. Because people are looking to buy them because money is available to invest in. That's anything else? Yes?
As the economy improves, do you think that most developers, when they want to develop a piece of land, they're going to actually do detailed analysis to see, do I need more industrial, do I need more office, do I need more retail, and do I need more residential? Do you think that they're really weighing the exact need of that community for those locations?
Well, I think to begin with, they're going to operate within the zoning restrictions that are there. I mean, land use restrictions are going to pretty much determine. And now, obviously, if you're starting with a blank slate, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to go out and develop something, but I've got to find some land, you'll probably look for something which, you probably do, at that point, you do the analysis and say, we need warehouses. Where can I find land? Where can I get land that's zoned out? Unfortunately, that's not necessarily majority developed. Most people have land already. And so they operate within those restrictions. Now, as far as the various types go, I think that retail's been in a long-term decline and will continue to be so. I think the internet has really bit into that market. There are still the tactile experience of the hands-on being in the store, et cetera, et cetera. But then again, some people still read newspapers. It doesn't mean newspapers are not a declining business. But the others, it's pretty much you operate within your land use restrictions. Yes, sir.
The residential rental market that's been so wild in South Florida, where do you see that going?
Well, for South Florida, Southeast Florida, it's a very complex question. And let me sort of lay it out. Generally, the availability of residences for purchase at costs below $250,000 in the state of Florida is extremely limited. In Southeast Florida, which is a high-cost area, it's more than limited. Which means that you're really looking at renting as the only real option in the market. So there's going to be continued pressure on the rental market. That becomes even more so as employment increases in this area. Go back to what I said about being a barrier island. It's land restrictions. Think San Francisco. Obviously, you're not that constrained. You're not that tight. But it's a similar situation. So there is in this part of the world a real issue with respect to workforce housing, where rental is the only option. And with limited amount of space, those rental options tend to be expensive rental options, even for workforce housing. I think that's a problem I think that needs to be addressed. And one of the things I've always said to realtor groups is that one of the best things you can do as a citizen, as a professional, as a real estate person, is to get involved in economic development issues. Because this is really going to set up what your market is, whether you're commercial, residential, what have you. And I think that, especially down here, it becomes very, very important. We have a governor who is encouraging the relocation of companies to Florida. Right? I do not think that a lot of companies, wherever they come from, will want to relocate to Columbia County. I don't even know where Columbia County is.
Lake City.
I don't even know where Columbia County is. It is in the state of Florida. Where would they want to relocate? Literally, maybe Orlando, maybe Tampa, Southeast Florida. Hello. So as we attract companies here, and as employment increases in this part of the state, the pressure becomes more and more. If that pressure becomes too much, what's the safety valve? The safety valve is companies go, instead of going to Miami, they go to Naples. Instead of going to Miami, they go to Tampa. Instead of going to Miami, they go to Pensacola, Jackson. So the area limits itself in terms of its growth because of the workforce housing issue. And that means more, and that comes from more pressure on rents, and that's where I see that going. Yes, sir.
What will be your analysis? Our current problem, I think all will agree, in office warehouses is the scarcity. We have a bunch of buyers looking to buy.
Right.
It's no affordable land to start construction.
Right.
And most of the warehouses are owned by institutional people where they are only interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see the frustration of most of us to go out there looking for properties and it's nothing available. And when you find something available, the price is outrageous, not comparable.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's putting pressure to some of the companies, like you just said,
Mhm.
relocate to someplace else.
Right, yeah.
How do you analyze that situation? Because if you
Well,
have
I-
land, we can build, but
The fundamental issue begins with the lack of space. Your restriction. If you did not have the Everglades, and please, I'm not advocating getting rid of the Everglades. Don't. If you didn't have the Everglades, you'd have a lot easier time because you have space to go west. You obviously can't go east. So really it's that constrained space that begins the problem. Ownership of land, who owns the land, is a secondary problem, but it's also a problem. And quite frankly, it's one which will require a lot of work and action. I can't give you a solution right now. If I did, I'd be making a ton of money as a consultant in the market. But I don't have an answer. But you got to keep working. You got to keep looking at alternatives. That's the only thing I can. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Is there really a lack of workforce housing, or is it really more of an inability for the consumer wanting to move into the existing housing stock?
I'm sorry, say the last part of it again.
Is it an inability for the consumer wanting to move into that existing housing stock?
So the question is it lack of availability or is it the inability? I think it's lack of availability is the primary problem. And we're certainly headed down that direction. It becomes more and more constrained. What you have is rental overcrowding as a result of that, et cetera, et cetera. We're not talking about, remember here folks, when I'm talking about workforce housing, I'm talking about a workforce whose salary goes up into middle income, solidly middle income. We're not talking about people working for minimum wage. We're not talking about Starbucks baristas. We're talking about companies who relocate here and employ skilled workers at salaries in the mid to upper 550s. And that's a problem here. Think about this for a second. How much money would it take for you to be able to live in New York City? All right? Yeah. It's not that bad, but that's the same issue. It's the same question. And when an employer who's thinking of relocating down here asks himself or herself that question, What do I have to pay my employees in order for them to live in Southeast Florida? And comes up with a bad answer. All of a sudden, guess what? Their pro formas don't work. And they're not. They're somewhere else. So, again, I just want to raise a yellow flag here. Not a red flag yet. It's yellow going to red. Let's say orange. How about that? Let me talk here about a study which we recently finished about water quality and real estate values. And let me explain sort of what we did and why this study and potential other studies are meaningful to you. We were approached by the Everglades Foundation on a project. And the project was, how does water quality in Florida affect property values? And we begin with the fact that the vast majority of occupied properties in Florida are on or in proximity to some sort of water, pond, lake, stream, river, the ocean, and all, what have you. So there is an impact. Number two, especially in South Florida, we have Lake Okeechobee. Lake Okeechobee is, in effect, the liver of Florida. What does your liver do? Your liver collects, well, pardon me, I should say kidneys. Okeechobee is the kidneys of Florida. It collects all the garbage that flows through your system and stores it. But like your kidneys, Okeechobee has to be released now and again. So the Corps of Engineers opens up the sluice gates, and all this crap flows out, right, through the Caloosahatchee and the St. Lucie to the ocean and the Gulf. Right? And during that period of time, the water is awful. And it flushes through, and the water is nice until the sluice gates are opened again. Well, the sluice gates are open periodically. No fewer than 5, no more than 15 years. So it's not a continuous flow. So the question is, what happens to real estate values when this goes on? So we took data which was available, and we put it into a model. And I want to explain the model to you, because the model is almost more important to you than the result. And this is a model, it's called the hedonic model. And what you do is you take a piece of property and you break it down into its component parts. Structural characteristics, neighborhood characteristics, regulatory characteristics, et cetera, et cetera. And then you reconstruct it. So what does each of these contribute to the value of the property? And one in there being water proximity and water turbidity. So this is called a hedonic model. You can break down any piece of property into its component parts and then test for the impact of a particular thing on it. Again, I'll explain it before. So that's what we did. Came up with some very interesting results. In Lee County, the price impact of a 1-foot change in water clarity. In other words, you can see clearly a foot farther down into the water. And you can see these numbers on a monthly basis, these changes in value are fairly significant. At the Caloosahatchee, right on the waterfront, 2.47%, ranging down to, a minuscule amount, 4 miles from the waterfront. If you look at Martin County, the St. Lucie estuary, you're basically talking about a bigger impact, ranging from 5.4% down to minuscule 4 miles from the waterfront. In other words, guess what? When the Okeechobee flushes out, real estate values are critically affected. These are 1-month changes, you know, and I think what we discovered was that if we invest in water quality, it doesn't only affect the pleasure of being in Florida or being on the water or being in proximity to the water, it affects property values. It affects the value of assets. It's important to people in the real estate community to be involved with water quality issues because it affects value. The study's much more complicated than this. I basically just excerpted some very key points for you. Right? If you want to read the whole study, it's online at floridarealtors.com/research. If you want to do that, that's great. I'm not responsible for what happens to your health after you read it. because economists wrote it. So be careful. But this is just the beginning of a number of research studies that we intend to do, because the title of the study is The Impact of Water Quality on Real Estate Values. Take the words water quality out, substitute school boundary changes. Take the word school boundary changes out, put crime rates. And more importantly, what is the impact on real estate values of commercial development? What's the impact of commercial values, the impact on commercial values of residential development? In other words, what happens, what's the interchange, what's the interaction between commercial development and residential development? We're going to do that study. We'll probably wind up doing it in 2016. And we're going to do that study. So this particular study is the doorway to a whole bunch of other stuff, which I think you'll find interesting as the year goes along. So keep tuned on that. We'll be publicizing it when we get it done. And those studies are going to be more doable on this one because the data is better. We did what we could with the data available. But guess what? The data is not available. It's very good for the Caloosahatchee and very good for the St. Lucie. Very bad for the rest of Florida. I, for example, would like to know what the impact of the phosphate runoff into Tampa Bay is, but we don't have data. So we can't look at it. And as you know from the economists, if the data is not there, it doesn't exist. Yes, sir.
John, you just heard the news about 2 days ago about the EPA kind of getting short-stopped by the courts. What impact does that have on the subject you discussed?
Well, I think really the EPA is a major player here, but not the only player. And so as far as we're concerned, the impact part, the takeaway I get from this is that in local areas, involvement in water quality issues is important. EPA not. All right, let me talk last about something which the congressman was asked about, and which I was going to talk about anyway, because you should see it's up here. The issue between the commercial lease tax and the corporate income tax. As you know, Florida has corporate income tax. It also taxes commercial leases, right? Everybody cruelly aware of it. Commercial lease tax rate is 6%. Florida Realtors has advocated getting rid of it. Florida Realtors has evolved its position to phasing it out, 1 point per year. So the question is, but now the governor seems to want to eliminate the corporate income tax instead of phasing out the commercial lease tax, arguing that it's probably better for Florida as a whole. So the question is it better for Florida as a whole? Let's take a look at the issue. Levies both of them. We've advocated. Governor would rather do that, and the governor will not support both. His favorite is reducing the corporate income tax. The phase out is Senate Bill 116. The corporate tax, cutting corporate tax by raising exemption is Senate Bill 76. Now, only 6 states have a corporate tax income tax rate below Florida. So we have a relatively low corporate rate. It only applies to C corporations. 93% of those who file pay no taxes. If the government gets its way with the increased exemption, going from $50,000 to $75,000, the maximum savings is about $1,300, $1,400. Right? But every business that rents commercial space pays taxes on those rents. That's the current system. Yes.
Okay, the main thing that most tenants are angry about, they don't like paying sales tax on the base lease rent. They don't like the idea of paying sales tax on triple nets because that includes taxes, insurance, and
Exactly. We don't like them paying it on anything. Okay, but you're right. It's rigged. It's rigged against the tenant in this case. All right. What's the comparative impact of both of these? Tax Watch did a study. All right. Take a look at that. On the left is the impact of increasing exemption in the corporate tax rate from $50,000 to $75,000. On the right, it's a phase out of the tax on commercial leases. Okay? What the study shows is that essentially the phasing out of the rent tax creates more jobs, creates more labor income, creates more value added, and increased output. These are not huge numbers relative to the size of the state economic product. I'm not going to claim this is going to make Florida skyrocket Florida into stratosphere of state. But if you simply compare these two options, the better option is phasing out the corporate taxes. Pardon me, the rent tax, Sorry. Right. And that's one of the reasons why we are behind the alternative of reducing the corporate lease tax as opposed to the income tax. Yes, sir.
How do you replace $300 million?
No, these are increases.
But if you take out the rent tax, that's $300 million to the state.
In terms of
Annually.
annual revenue. If you take a look at this, you get a good part of that back by sales taxes and other things. Because essentially, if you're going to increase labor, you get more part of it back. You get more back because you get a higher economic impact. That's where you get it back. Now the question is, are we going to replace it? Well, it's a tax cut. You're not going to replace it fully. It's less costly to partner. It has a greater economic impact than the other. That's really what it is.
Here's my question. This is like having 10 people in 10 rooms. Yes, we want to attract business, so we're going to lower taxes. Somebody's got to pay the bill. We're talking about water quality issues. You know, we saw it happen with the water management district. You know, what point does somebody stand up and say, hey guys, left and right have to talk, or we're going to destroy one thing and create something else?
That's the conversation which Congressman talked about. That's the conversation that which Congressman talked about. You can only do this, if you want to take this to its extreme, you can only do this, you can only pursue policies like this if you shut down the state government. Yeah, some of you in the audience, and don't cheer for this, may advocate that, and that's an alternative. But that's the conversation the Congressman talked about. It's not going on in Tallahassee. We're dealing with a specific issue here, and only a specific issue. Within the broader context, yeah, I'd love to see that conversation. But as he said, it's not happening.
Won't the commercial lease tax be more than compensated for by the internet sales tax? Just Amazon alone collecting sales tax must have had a great effect on the state economy.
Probably, and that's another analysis which we probably weren't doing. The real question is and we go back to the last question. What's the goal here? Is the goal, that's not an issue if the goal is simply to reduce taxes. You don't worry about revenues. If the goal is to maintain a certain level of state services and at the same time reducing tax burden as much as possible, then it is another question. So, again, it goes back to that conversation. Yeah, Ken.
John, one of the things I would be concerned about with the rent tax, however, is that landlords tend to be in control of increased rents when rent tax reduces rents, so they have the ability to raise rents, where the corporate tax wouldn't necessarily be reflected in a reduction of corporate tax.
Joe had a question. The question is that it's entirely possible this would have no impact on rents, that getting rid of the tax has no impact on rents, but the corporate income tax would have an impact. It all goes back to one of the biggest and oldest debates in public finance is passing forward tax increases and tax cuts. And the question has to do with what's the elasticity of the product. And the more elastic the product is, the more likely that whatever it is will be passed forward. The less elastic, it's unlikely not. And so that goes on, that debate goes on and on. I don't have an answer to your question, but I think it's a very good question. And I think it's another piece that has to go on the table. Yes, sir.
Do you know what the Florida Tax Watch position is on the state sales
I think they're in favor of Florida Realtor's position. These are their numbers. These are the tax watch numbers.
And your position?
And tax watch's approach is going to, and I'm not speaking for them, okay? Tax watch's approach is to, if you're choosing between two alternatives, choose the one that has the greater impact on the economy. So I would suspect they would be in favor of the commercial lease tax phase out over the corporate tax increase. This study is going to be released in the next week or so. Yeah.
John, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Oh.
A question to you. When the market shifts, we set up a cap on the property tax for the non-residents,
Right.
10% cap, which is still a nice increase on your tax. Is it forever, or at the time we did that for a certain time, and it's going to come back? And
Everything will come back. Nothing really is forever. I think that changing administrations, changing philosophies, any kind of change is going to reopen things. If you remember what the congressman said, that things will keep coming up. In my lifetime, in my professional experience, I've seen mortgage tax credit come up seriously about 5 times. The 1031 exchange provisions comes up now and again. This will probably come back up again here too. So it's nothing.
in fact, you said that people gain confidence again, and we are coming to retire here, so they will become full resident, but for the foreigners,
Yeah.
or for the second home, and the commercial owner are being killed.
Yeah. No, we do. We also, the visa rules also restrict them and cause that kind of problem. As you know, NAR and Florida Realtors have been advocating for a change in visa regulations to allow foreign owners to be here more than 6 months a year. But that's been resisted, and we're still trying on that too. So it's visa restrictions and taxes. They're both problems. All right, any questions on anything that I said in the beginning?
You have a crystal ball for the future? Tell us about the future.
I did, but I put it was a terrible, terrible accident. Somebody threw it against the wall in a fit of rage. I'm not sure. I think it might have been me. Anyway, yeah, one more.
2 related questions. Interest rates, there's an inverse correlation between interest rates and pricing.
Correct.
And I don't know how large a factor you see that, or does it vary, does that correlation vary related to that?
Yeah.
One of our issues here is scarcity of inventory.
Right.
And a lot of that scarcity is due to the fact that current owners don't have a lot of equity. And, one can conjecture on how much spread they need, but let's say it's 20% before it's rational to consider changing their position, putting a property on the market. What do you see as the impact on the economy as interest rates rise? Doesn't that make that even more difficult for people who are in low equity positions to add inventory to the market?
Yeah, I would say that the price impact overwhelms the interest rate impact. That in fact, demand is up to the point, demand is pushing prices to the point where what we foresee as potential interest rate increases will be irrelevant to that. If I were to see interest rates skyrocketing from 1% to 10% within a year, I would answer that differently, but I don't. It's really more movement of about a point to a point and a half, maybe as much as 2 points in the course of a year in which prices will grow by about 10%. Or, more importantly, real values will grow by about 4 to 5%. So what's happening is that the real value, real appreciation, exceeds interest rate costs by a significant amount, which means that you're going to start unlocking a lot of stuff. But you're unlocking it at prices which may stack the demand. It's a balancing. Thank you all very much.